level to move us in the direction to engage stakeholders at the local level and think about all different groups of students?
Yeah, so at the national level, as Congress was doing its work, there was a lot of participation both from education groups, but also from civil rights organizations, from disabilities organizations, from business, who were worried that that too much of the focus that NCLB had on moving the needle, especially for low-income kids and kids of color, would disappear. So we worked quite hard as a collective, again, business, disabilities, civil rights organizations, all working together to make sure there were some guardrails in the law. So yes, states can include more indicators than just test scores, and that's a good thing. But there still has to be a majority of the focus, a substantial majority of the focus needs to be on academic preparation for college and careers. So that's clear. Secondly, states have to set goals. They have to set bigger goals for low-income kids and kids of color because those kids are behind. So that law requires that. And it also requires sort of broad-based participation in the work that states are doing as they try to figure out how to bring their systems into line with both what their states need and what this law allows.
So, and we've been in meetings together at the national level where states are beginning to grapple with how they really deepen engagement and think about adjusting their system to respond to the requirements of ESSA. Stephen, talk a little bit about your approach in the state, knowing that it's time for the accountability system to be updated and we have this need to respond to ESSA.
Well, the way I've thought about it is, you're going to have pain in any situation, but you get to decide when you want it. And so you can either do a top-down system and tell everybody this is what you're going to do and have the pain of everybody trying to revolt, or you can try to have the pain up front of having to marshal a Cecil B. DeMille cast of thousands while you're developing your system. And I chose to go that way. I joke about that a lot, but I do believe that it's been my experience through the years, there are just some things you can't make people do. It's a lot better to have them come along with you. And I think building an accountability system, especially in a time when there's been so much politicization around testing and standards and everything, that you really have to build something from the ground up. So for us, we decided we were going to try to get as many people involved as possible. So we've got a 44-member steering committee. Trust me when I say it would be a lot easier if there were fewer. But there are 44, and many of you are actually sitting in the audience today. We have 5 committees that have around 30 people on each of them that are working on pieces of the system. Then we have 3 more committees that are actually between the two that have about 20 to 30 on those. We are doing things like partnering with the CB and PG, who are going to help us get out into the communities for focus groups. We're partnering with the Urban League and the local NAACP chapters to gather feedback there and do focus groups there. We're working with our business and industry to have specific focus groups on that. But to me, that's all critical for people to understand why this is important. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't care that anybody can quote to me what ESSA law says. I do want them to be able to say why it's important that we pay attention to these things. And you can't do that by simply hoping that they figure it out when we put it on the website. As my buddy CB likes to say, hope is not a strategy. So you actually have to design that into your system. So as we're building this, I mean, it's twofold for me. Yes, it's to build a system, and yes, it's to meet some requirements. But the second one, and I think the bigger one, is it's also a case making for people to understand why this is so important.
And if I could just add, sort of piggyback on that one, and I think that you all on the Pritchard Committee probably know this better than any group of citizens in any other state, but this is not one you can sit out, right?
That's right.
Accountability system is the major signaling system, right? It's where you set your goals. It's where schools learn whether they're making enough progress or not. And the special role of folks like you in this cannot be understated. All of the pressures on him from...
Thanks, Kate.
all the pressures on him from educators will be do less, set lower goals. It's just that's a natural inclination. Schools don't want to be labeled as not moving up fast enough, and so all those pressures will pull in one direction. Your job is to create a counterforce there. And that, I mean, that is why we've worked with advocacy groups around the country saying, yes, it's painful, yes, it's technical, sitting around and thinking not just about measures, but about how to put them together into our rating is really hard, crazy stuff. But you can't sit it out.
That's right.
So we have a couple slides that illustrate one, kind of our trajectory in Kentucky over time. So 1990, the passage of CARA, then NCLB at the federal level. So for a time in Kentucky, we were responding to NCLB in the way that we needed to, but we still had an enhanced accountability system that was bigger than NCLB. And then during the period of time between NCLB and ESSA, we had waivers around Senate Bill 1, and that is now our unbridled accountability system. Both of those systems that Kentucky has put in place, if we can go to the next slide, are pretty comprehensive as far as multiple measures of student success. If you look at NCLB, states are being held accountable for reading, mathematics, and graduation. CARA was much more comprehensive than that in what we as Kentuckians expected of our accountability system and expected of our students, including science, social studies, writing, arts and practical living, writing portfolios, in addition to dropout, attendance, retention, and transition measures. And that was important to all of us in those years of CARA, that we were really looking at the whole child and the needs of the whole child and the educational needs of a child. So that continued through the NCLB years and continued into the Senate Bill 1 waiver years. And we've struggled with some of those components over the years. Stephen mentioned the frustration around program reviews, and many of you will remember well the frustration with writing portfolios and questions about whether or not they were valid and reliable, and they should really be included in our accountability system. The rub has always been this balance, finding balance, and Katie, you used this word, finding balance between objective and subjective measures of student performance, opportunities, and access that we provide to them through the system. So if you will both, from your perspectives, talk a little bit about the challenge of that balancing act as we think about what traditionally has been rolled into accountability and what we might be thinking of today as going into an actual accountability calculation and the things that we value for all students.
Did we go first?
Yeah.
So I think there's, I mean, I've said a lot, this is at the same time the most exciting and the most horrifying time of my career. I mean, we have this incredible opportunity, but there's so much riding on it. And I guess the way to start thinking about this is when I think about the system, kind of at a high level, the system needs to drive adults to make good decisions for kids. And frankly, I think that we're at a point with unbridled learning that doesn't happen as much anymore. There's a little bit more about chasing points. There's a little bit more about how we can make a decision that actually plays the game a little bit versus what's going to be right. In fact, I've come to say where, you know, I think the new system, we have to somehow shift our thinking from what I have a right to do what's right. And I think that's a pretty big shift. Because a lot of people will say, well, if it's not tested, it's not taught. If it's not accountability, it's not important. And so part of what we've been talking about with the steering committee, as you know, Richard, because you're a member, and what we've been talking about in the committees is how do we start to change that conversation to be about making sure that we're actually making decisions that will result in every child having that opportunity that will lead to a closing the achievement gap. So as we're thinking about it, we've thought about, I've told the committees, I don't want you to think outside the box. I want you to forget where the box is for a while. We can always walk back, but if you don't start there, I don't think you can ever move away. So right now, basically you're college ready if you pass the ACT on one given day your junior year. You can take the COSA, you can do some other things to make that up, sort of. You know, science and social studies are not quite as important right now. You can become career ready by making a certain grade on certain tests. And what we've started trying to change the conversation is, well, first let's think about college and career ready differently. What does that mean? It's not enough just to say, well, it means a kid can go into credit-bearing coursework anymore. So we're having conversations around, well, what if a kid takes and passes 3 AP courses? You know, what if they actually get 3 credentials in a career and technical education pathway? Does that mean they're career ready? Well, probably. And so I think as we're thinking about things differently, we're thinking about it beyond just the test score, although 100% agree with Katie, that you've got to still have those because those are ultimately your measuring stick. But there are other things about it that if people just focus on that test, they're going to start with the game playing a little bit. So the other part of the conversation we're having is how do you be more innovative? So how do we start looking at the fact that if we've got a group of students that are failing algebra 1, 3, and 4 times, they're not getting opportunities. So what are you doing differently for those kids? Looking at competency-based education and saying, well, if a 10-year-old 5th grader can make proficient on the 7th grade math test, we should celebrate that, and not that he was held back in 5th grade and made distinguished, because you got more points for it. Looking at opportunities for kids around advanced coursework. Focusing on low-income and minority students to actually make a prominent piece of the puzzle, closing the achievement gap, not just that we talk about it after test scores come out. So a lot of different aspects of it, I think, but also very difficult to grapple with because some of those we don't know how the measure looks, and how do you ensure that it's valid and reliable.
Yeah, so there's no easy answers for any of those questions or any of the others you have to answer, which really have to do with sort of what do your goals look like, how do you create stretch in the system but not break people, and how do you get out of this numbers game?
Yeah.
I think as we think about it as an organization, some of the answer is being careful about what goes in big A accountability in the algorithm, because you put too much in there and you end up with just craziness and points gamesmanship. But there's a lot of other ways to make data more transparent with dashboard reporting systems and so on that still have clear ratings information around sort of college readiness outcomes, whatever basket of those you choose, but that also make things like school culture and climate and opportunity and discipline more transparent as well. Because we got to do that work. Stephen's absolutely right about that.
And we are moving to more of a dashboard. That's been the big conversation here is doing that to ensure that I want a parent to be able to go in and say, are my kids having an opportunity to take the arts? You know, are my kids, if my child is a gifted and talented student, are they doing something to really meet their needs? To me, that dashboard is a lot more powerful because, and you know, I know people talk about, well, we have a school report card now, but reality is I think people don't use that. And it's also usually so cluttered, it's kind of hard to see. I mean, a dashboard is good, but if your dashboard looks like a 747, probably not going to be a lot of great information, you know. So, but at the same time, I think maybe the way to say this, Katie, is, you know, I said this to our steering committee last week. You know, accountability should be more of a spotlight that either shines on the great things that are happening or exposes the dark things. But we've kind of treated it more as the hammer, and with that hammer, a lot of things have become a nail.
So this is all on a very fast track, and right? And we have a timeline.
Yeah, I'm sort of out of breath now.
For the state to respond to with a plan for how we'll respond to ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act. Some states are making very small adjustments to ensure that their accountability model it meets the letter of the federal law. Kentucky has chosen to really think about the system writ large, think about our values for students once again, and to put together an accountability model that is Kentucky specific while meeting